Hello and welcome to the Rita House podcast. I'm your host, Dina O, and I am here today with David Strick. He is a legendary Los Angeles photographer.
That's a good thing, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And he's going to be having a photography exhibition here at Rita House. Next Saturday, we have the opening. The name of the exhibition is Between Scenes, 1975 to 2004. I'm going to start actually with that title. David, why those dates in particular, or you have them you stopped at 2004 shooting photographs? Or
The pictures in the show stopped then because there was a photo festival in the south of France for which the prints were printed. And this is a group of prints from that group. And so I continued to shoot afterwards. But this was sort of the end of the period of time where I was shooting in analog with film. And afterwards, I converted to digital like every other person on the planet, basically. And
so these are all analog.
Yeah.
And okay, they're all film.
Yeah, exactly. And they were printed by a particular guy who retired right after printing the show. It was the last show he printed.
Oh,
wow. A master printer named Richard Azoulay for the festival. So they were there and I wanted to have a show because in particular, I've always wanted to have a show at Rita House because it sort of tracks so exactly with my own sensibility. It's a kind of shrine to the film business and, kind of a natural extension of which I thought I could fit myself into. And so there was an opening they had, and I had these prints available. So I thought I'd do that. And that's why there is a circumscribed timeline to it. But I've continued afterwards. Fumbling in digital.
Fumbling in digital.
Yes.
Yes, Rita House, as a lot of you know, has a ton of Hollywood history. And as you might not know, David has a ton of Hollywood history. So would you say that primarily all the photos take place on a scene of like a movie set? I know you have another teenage movie in there. You've got Austin Powers. Can you talk a little bit about that trajectory of being behind the scenes before BTS was a thing?
There were always people behind the scenes. They just didn't talk about it.
They didn't do hashtag BTS. Yeah.
No, absolutely. It was there's a variety of pictures there on, street situations and social situations and whatever. And that's what I covered over the years. Things started about 1975. My interest in it as a specific subject matter area started then, and I just did everything I could to get access to anything Hollywood related for a really long time. Over the years, I got more access to movie sets and TV sets and things like that, and sort of more officially present at official sorts of events in a semi-legitimate set of ways, increasingly. And so the trajectory then was sort of like from the outside, from the streets and so forth, to the inside on the sets whose perimeters are guarded fairly,
Yeah, how did you get in there?
Credentials.
Yes.
It takes a while to develop. And also a certain familiarity of the studios and publicists with me as someone who wouldn't misbehave if I was given a one-day pass or something to their set. And I would also shoot on.
You really strike me as someone who would misbehave, though.
No, I'm on a set. You're basically trying to be invisible.
Right.
It's a factory floor and they're very serious about what they do. And you have to anticipate where they're going to be, not just where they are now. And photography, when you're a photographer, you're also to some extent shutting out when you're shooting what is immediately around you. So you have to have kind of a sixth sense because, there might be some dolly track on the floor and they mean the camera movement to come in your direction, or someone has to crisscross or something, or you're just in someone's eye line. Some actors are incredibly sensitive to something out in the dark that's moving. And so you wear dark clothes or you just it helps to be short to begin with. Now I started out that way. That's probably the biggest thing I had going.
An advantage.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I took advantage and I would get down lower. I'd practically flat on the floor if I needed to be.
Awesome. You're like a ninja.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
One time I hid behind another still photographer on the set because there was a particularly sensitive actor there. And she said, if you stand behind me or crouch behind me, you'll be okay. And I was. So I just cowered.
Cowered your way through Hollywood.
Absolutely. Cringed and cowered, and cowered, whatever. Yeah.
There was a moment when you almost got canceled by, was it Paramount, because of the elephant picture? Can you
Yes.
talk a little? I think that's
Oh,
a very interesting arc and kind of 180 that happened with that.
yeah. Well, it sort of shows you how everything kind of works and how sensitive the entire apparatus of Hollywood has to be about things. So I was on the set of a movie called Deep Impact, which is an asteroid, threatens the Earth
Mhm.
movie that was competing with another asteroid threatens the Earth movie that was shooting simultaneously. So they invited me on the set and another photographer or two, I think, to photograph this day where they had a lot of animals on the set that were, they were trying to preserve the species. So it was like a zoo full of animals they were going to put into a cave and save the Earth because they would have the DNA preserved forever. And so I noticed one of the elephant wranglers uh, dealing with an elephant who was, because the animals have body functions as we all do. And this elephant was having a moment. And so the female, elephant wrangler had a giant garbage bag behind the elephant's posterior and was holding it out like this, waiting for the elephant to do what it needed to do. And I took the picture. It ran in Premiere Magazine, where I had a monthly photo column at the time for about 11 and a half years. And the day after publication, I got a call from the junior publicist at Paramount with whom I'd gotten the permission to get on the set. And she gave me a, 10-minute or so dressing down saying, this is the picture. I just wanted to tell you officially that the picture is considered to be disgusting, humiliating. This is, a movie with consequences about consequential things. And it just makes fun of it. It's just, she used a number of adjectives. And I knew her; she was a nice woman. But it was, I said, "I'm really sorry. Sorry seeing it that way. I thought it was kind of a harmless, funny thing that for which I'm known, and I've done other pictures on your sets like that. So I apologize for the consequences." And she said, "I just don't know, David, if we're going to be able to invite you on very many Paramount sets ever again after this. I just have to see." And I was sort of, down about that. Next day, I was in San Francisco on another job. Flying back to town, my then beeper went off. I used to have a beeper like
I
a
had
lot
a
of.
pager too.
Oh, really? Okay.
I know.
Well, this
It's like it
vibrated
ages
and
us. Yeah.
yeah. So it's a dated reference. You kids out there, look it up. And
No
I
cell phone.
no
Yeah.
cell phone. But so I went to a payphone or
Mhm.
whatever, and called in, and it was a mess. It was from her, the same publicist, and I said hi. Thinking I was now, what it could only get worse from there. And she said, David, the picture's gone from being the most hated picture in the history of Paramount Studios to one of the best liked. I said, what? And she said, the producer and the director both want Prince. And I said, okay, good. And I didn't examine it any further. I just thought, get out of this with just a thank you and, good outcome, or something like that. And that was it. So, what it taught me, in a rather profound way was, these things are variable. And I had been actually right about people's sense of humor about it. And it turned out to be a photo that got pirated all over the world. I mean, I did a Google search years ago, and I don't know, there were like thousands and thousands of unauthorized uses of that picture. It was on bulletin boards and things like that because people would put a caption on it, or it became a meme where they would say, "You thought you had a crappy job," and it would be that kind of thing. And
Yeah.
it was mentioned in Sports Illustrated once as being on a bulletin board of a baseball team in Texas, and so it just had this life of its own in this funny way as a kind of universal symbol of what you have to do a job in
The
this.
trenches.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
That's a great story. That is a great story.
well, it had a happy ending also. That's
Yes, we like
they're
happy endings.
damn right.
Um, I want to couch this concept that it was taken and run with and unauthorized, because I want to come back to that idea that now it's really hard to keep track as a photographer, I imagine, like how your images are used. But before that, I wanted to ask you, you said to them, "This is what I'm known for." Can you tell me a little bit more about what you're known for?
Well, in that particular, I tended to find the humor in things. And so I became sort of known for that. And I would, one of the ways I would get on entertainment productions was I would go on days where, let's say, the principal actors weren't there, and there was just something interesting, funny, surreal, quirky happening, and or I'd be on a set with main actors and I'd ignore them because they weren't doing anything interesting.
Hmm.
And the photo column and the photos I didn't depend on recognizability; they depended on actual pictorial value of some sort. And so I there were just so many times I just ignored principal actor. I had to. They just they'd come up and they'd hit their mark and they'd speak a few lines, and they'd do that 25 times, and that just it was their celebrity spoke for itself, but it didn't speak photographically beyond the confines of the the publicity release.
Hmm.
So it became a kind of a closed loop where I was invited on in situations where they thought there was something that would make a good picture. And so it helps to have that kind of feedback loop in a situation like that.
Hmm.
And that's why I'd been invited on the animal day of this thing as opposed to the main actor day. There were no actors on set that day. There was
Right.
just a zoo full of animals, giraffes, and
You have an unexpected kind of perspective, and you were able to find the humor in situations or these interesting perspectives.
well, also Hollywood is just kind of a parade of those things.
Yeah.
It's not an unknown
Have
quantity in
you lived
Hollywood.
here all your life?
My conscious life. I came here when I was about 2, but that
Gotcha.
doesn't count.
Hmm. Yeah, but that's a long time. Yeah.
Yeah.
You've seen it go through everything.
Yeah, and also I'm the third of 4 generations of a Hollywood family. So I grew up a little bit inside, and I was on sets as a kid a few times.
What was your dad doing or your mom?
Let's see, it goes back to the 1930s where my
Oh, wow.
aunt and uncle were, my aunt won was a woman named Gail Sondergaard, an actress who won the first Academy Award ever given to Best Supporting Actress
Cool.
for a movie called Anthony Adverse, and her husband was a director. They were blacklisted for about 20 years during the McCarthy era.
Oh, wow.
My dad was an independent film director who did a couple of studio movies. My mother was a studio publicist. My wife was a film executive. My son is a junior film executive. So it's kind of like this, DNA inevitability here. And my familiarity was, again, as a kid, I just didn't care about Hollywood. It was just something my dad did, and I went to a couple of sets, but it was just more like I had a sense of like, befuddled wonder more than anything. I wasn't interested in the movie business. But as a photographer, when I started out at about age 21, I got sent back to those situations, to the publicity events and the, parties and on a few sets. And I realized that the pictures I was being asked to take were very limited.
Mm.
I would take interesting pictures sometimes, accidentally almost, but they would not necessarily run them. And so I realized if I wanted to do something interesting, I would have to do projects on my own and try to pitch stories on my own and kind of work outside the system in which I just sort of receive incoming assignments. So that I started to do that and to be proactive, and that led to all of this.
So instead of just taking what was given to you,
Yes.
you had a vision of what you wanted to see and how you wanted to frame things. And so you would pitch that.
Yeah.
Okay. How would you pitch that? Like, I don't know.
Let me do this for you.
Great.
Was that basically that?
Yeah.
For example, a friend of mine and I, a friend who is a former child actor, actually, Tom Nolan, and I came up with this idea to do a story about open call auditions or auditions of all sorts. So we went to tons of auditions. There'd be like an audition for Groucho's, at Universal Studios, or there'd be, 55 W.C. Fields lookalikes on Sunset Boulevard for some other unknown reason, and James Dean's or something like that. And the studios actually, in those days in particular, use a lot of those open call auditions to publicize their shows. They say, come one, come all, and we're going to have a room full of guys looking like James Dean or trying to. So I would go to those things, or I'd go to the private auditions that I could get into for like an underwear ad or something like that, and shoot those. And we pitched that idea to New West magazine. They ran a story about it, and that was kind of the model for what I did thereafter, either with a writer or by myself.
Mm.
I was also a stringer for the New York Times for many years
Mhm.
in the 70s. And so
What
I
does
had,
stringer mean?
it's a glorified freelancer. It's sort of like the
Okay.
go-to person in a certain area. So I was their guy in Southern California,
Mhm.
doing a whole variety of different kind of hard news to soft news jobs. And so,
Sorry, what the difference between soft and hard news?
hard news is, traffic accidents to disasters, fires, earthquakes, whatever, press conferences, things like that.
Mhm.
Soft news is, features interviews with celebrities,
Mm.
visits to sets, things like that.
Okay, so that would be soft
Yeah.
news, the visits to sets.
So I was the everything, photographer. But as a result, I could range widely with, credentials and be accepted by publicists, get into situations that, photographers without credentials couldn't get into.
That's awesome. Do you remember the first photo you took
As a human being.
as a human being?
Well, I'm still not a human. Not quite.
Or just like, do you remember like the feeling of like getting the camera? I know you said you started when you were like 20 something, but maybe you even started before then.
Oh yeah, I started as a
As a
teenager.
teenager. So even as a teenager, you remember the like sensation and
Yes.
the moment or the situation you were in at all?
I don't remember like Dave's first photo.
Yeah.
Because it's basically it's like a gesture where you click a shutter. So it's not.
Right. Or
It's,
like what
it's
you wanted to capture maybe, or like where you were. Were you at home?
no, I was on the high school wrestling team. I'm
Oh.
probably my moment of clarity was I was a bad wrestler on my high school wrestling team. All right, varsity but bad, and we had a bad wrestling team, well-intentioned bad wrestling team. So anyway, I
Well-intentioned wrestlers.
in between matches that I inevitably lost, I had a camera and I would start taking pictures of the other wrestling events. So the other wrestlers winning and losing. And so there was this
Oh.
one picture I took in which it was this totally ambiguous thrashing of these teenage bodies where it looked like they were an octopus. They didn't look human. It was all kind
Ooh.
of limbs entangled. And it was kind of out of focus and kind of tilted, but it won the Boys Club of America photo contest when I was 16 years old. And
Oh
that
my gosh.
set me inexorably on this path towards, intermediacy, I guess, you could say.
The octopus wrestling moment.
Yeah, and I still have that up in my office, the out of
That's
focus tilted prize-winning picture. I got a U.S. savings bond that was like worth like $200 if you let it mature for 10 years.
wow.
Cashed it out early and got a better camera.
Nice. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
what cameras are you using these days? What are you into?
Just whatever.
For our gear geeks.
Oh, I've been shooting with Canon cameras, but I've actually been writing for the last period of time. I've been working on transforming the entirety of my kind of archive into a combination of words and pictures. So
that makes sense.
I
Yeah.
really haven't been shooting. I have a camera that's like 10 or 15 years old, Canon camera or two. But it's sort of, they're fabulous. They're all fabulous now. You can do things with them that you never could do before.
Mhm.
But they're essentially the same. It's the same process as always. Just look at something and press something.
Yes.
The
yeah.
camera does everything else.
With
whether
the
it's
film
analog or
cameras,
digital.
what were you using?
A whole bunch of different ones. I mean,
Yeah.
the high school wrestling picture was a Yashica Mat EM twin lens reflex, which was a knockoff of a Rolleiflex camera,
Oh wow.
and then a Topcon Auto 100, and then a Nikon, Canons, Leicas for many years of various sorts, medium format cameras, Hasselblad cameras, not Bron. Anyway, Mamiya cameras, wide lux. I just, whatever.
You get your hands on something and learn like all the different types of cameras. Do you find that photographers become kind of brand, like they like a Canon, they use a Canon only, or do they you like to try different types?
I would sort of bounce around a
Yeah.
lot, depending, but for various reasons. But people just get comfortable with certain tools in their
Right.
hand.
That's why I think it's unusual to be like, well, let me just try a whole different type because that's cool. That probably gave you a different perspective as well.
It somewhat did. I mean, especially if you have a format that's ultra wide or a
Yeah.
format that's square, it completely changes how you have to frame things and anticipate things. And some people can't make adjustments among those kinds of formats. Other people just sort of can. I mean some people who are incredibly good.
hmm
They're just great photographers, but they're just comfortable in a certain set of physical
Parameters.
dimensions. Yeah.
That makes sense. So you're flexible.
Yeah, or either that or indeterminate. I'm not sure. It's like
Unstable.
yeah, just like I'm just indecisive.
So for this book that you're creating, so it's kind of like a memoir.
It's a combination of a memoir and a a set of looks at things that actually happened, because alongside all the pictures that I took for 45 or 50 years in and around Hollywood and California, Los Angeles, I also had a lot of experiences. Some of
Mhm.
them were incredibly varied. Some of them were, like existentially serious. Some of them were incredibly trivial and funny. These all over the place. So it's kind of like, it's a compendium of all of those things with pictures. So it's about, at this point of the project, it's about 70,000 words. And, I don't even know how many pictures, probably 1,000 pictures.
Wow.
So it's a humongous thing
Yeah.
that I'm trying to edit down to something more
Or
reasonable.
maybe 2 books.
Yeah, or maybe just like, separate pages that I
Chronicles.
release one at a time. I don't know.
Yeah. Do you have a name for it?
At this point, it's called Retrospect,
Retrospect.
working
Awesome.
title.
Keep your eyes out for that.
Yes, I'm not even sure which camera I'm looking at here, but anyway.
Um, have you been in front of the camera much?
No,
Okay.
as
So
little as possible.
as little, so you are one of those behind. Yeah.
Well, I should be.
Not a self-portrait guy.
Oh God, no, no. For one thing, I have really short little arms, so I can't get I got sort of stubby arms, so I can't get a selfie far enough away from
That's
me
what
to.
selfie sticks are for,
So I guess
David.
no, but yeah, but then you lose the camera.
Yeah.
Do you realize how many people have died doing selfies?
This is, I think, a hilarious tragedy.
It is
Yeah.
mostly. I shouldn't say which direction I think the reality bends. But it's a thing. It's like you cannot deny this incredible at a rate far greater than photographers die in conflict zones.
Yeah.
I might add.
Wow.
Think about it.
Like journalists in war zones and stuff.
That's how dangerous the selfie is, boys and girls. Don't try this at home or anywhere else.
Let a photographer take the photo of you, okay? For
Hire,
everyone's safety.
Exactly. Ask another tourist to do that.
Speaking of just how things have changed and evolved in photography and in almost the economy of Hollywood, I'm sure you've seen a lot of shifts in the way business works almost. Like, can you comment on that at all?
Well, it's gone from what used to be a much more appreciably outside sort of set of, in terms of the way publicity works in Hollywood in particular, they used to have a lot more public events that they would then invite a lot of media to. Now it's so much is done on the web, and it's done, getting influencers to do things and so forth, and it's all behind doors and sequestered. So the Hollywood that I photographed, particularly in the period of this show,
Yeah.
was a very physically extroverted Hollywood that happened a lot more outside than it does now. I mean, there are still parties and there's still public events and premieres and things like that, but they used to have publicity stunts like those, auditions, those public auditions I told you about.
Yeah.
Which were, there as kind of media bait.
Mhm.
In part, they were legitimately trying to cast a movie, but they thought, "Hi, it's a James Dean movie. Let's invite everybody to this,
Mhm.
to the front end of this." And now it's a lot different. It's also worldwide and instantaneous in a way it never used to be, and it's a more complicated place in a lot of ways. But it has definitely changed in terms of the physical nature of it, the way it used to kind of project outwards.
It's probably COVID did something for that too, maybe.
Probably, it certainly didn't make it more
Extroverted.
extroverted. Yeah,
Yeah. And as far as like photography as a business, it's so much easier now for people to get their hands on, becoming a photographer, it seems like. It used to be a little harder. I don't know. Is that just me or?
Well, it's not just you.
Thank you.
No, what I mean to say here is I mean, photography has become vastly, like, insanely more common. Basically,
Yeah.
everybody walks around with a very sophisticated camera
That's
in their
been
pocket.
my experience. Yeah.
So everybody's a photographer in a way everybody never used to be. Everybody can, put their stuff up on the web, see it go viral for any number of reasons, great personas around it. It's just a huge, huge thing. And in the way it never used to be. Everybody always had a camera before, or most people, a lot of people had cameras.
Yeah.
Everybody starts out trying to be a musician, and they give up whatever, instrument that turns out they could never play. So I had a guitar. I had, don't have it now, but everybody always seemed to have a camera. But they didn't carry it around with them all the time, and they weren't always, risking their lives with selfies and so forth. So at the same time, the high end of photography, a lot of the media business has changed, probably for the worse in a lot of ways, in the sense that a whole lot of,
So oversaturated.
well, also the business model for the kind, for newspapers and magazines has gone away. And
Mhm.
so they can't be supported by advertising. So we have an enrichment, a kind of a flat earth where everybody has equal access to the same kinds of, projecting the work outwards to the world.
And
But
master classes, like there's more ways to just learn how to do the thing. It's just so much there's so much information right there all the time. Like you
no,
don't have to go to photography school necessarily. You can like learn how to do it DIY, which I'm sure always was the case. But yeah, it does seem with the internet, you can find everything so fast. And the internet at that time in the 70s, I mean, what wasn't that active?
70s wasn't really there. I mean, the 70s,
Yeah.
it was, it wasn't there till the 80s, 90s, maybe the
Yeah. And I
90s.
remember it was like Ask Jeeves in the beginning and like, yeah, it's like now it's just, yeah.
Well, it also, there wasn't, computers were around for and being used commonly for 15, 20 years or more before the internet became actually connected and became a place, a repository for anything worth consuming news on or anything like that. But what's happened is there's been a kind of a defunding of media, and that's why you know so the titles, the magazines and newspapers that used to convey things to people and support people in an actual career are going away, to a significant degree. So everybody has access to become a photographer, but there are fewer ways
To monetize it.
to monetize it. And you can monetize it as an influencer sort of a way, as a one man brand
Hmm.
or one person brand, but you can't. That's a very dodgy thing that you can't think I'm going to retire after 30 years of working at a local newspaper or something like that, the way you used to. They
Hmm.
still exist, but in very truncated, desperate, hanging on by their fingernails form now. So
Hmm.
it's a
Hmm.
different mediascape. I'm glad I was able to take advantage of the last dying, embers of the media business when I could, when I
I'm
had
very
that
excited
access.
about the show and being able to see all of that work together in the space.
I am too, actually. I am, because I haven't seen it framed yet. I haven't seen it up. We haven't chosen what's actually going to be there. So we're speaking, in a kind of a,
We just know
ignorance
it's
is,
between those times.
yeah, exactly. We're
Yeah.
we're in the ignorance is bliss stage of
We
this.
are the Austin Powers BTS shot. Is that going to be in it?
I sure hope
I
so.
hope so. I was
I
going
hope
to
so.
ask that set. I mean, so much artful, so many interesting, like that must have been so fun to shoot and be on.
Oh, it was. It was, every line in the movie was like that. It was a kind of it was a big studio seat of the pants thing, because it was,
Hmm.
and a comedy depends on absolute chemistry
Hmm.
in every scene. And so it had to be played certain ways, and the takes, the variations of the sort of takes it took to get there. And just that picture, which is a person painted in kind of a swirly op art sort of form, a woman lying on an equivalently op art sort of floor, was just a little aside in the movie. It's one of those things that happens when they have like genius art directors, and these
Yeah.
people will work for, labor for months to kind of figure out a decorations or sets or whatever, and it goes by in a split second that you don't even notice. So when I see that movie, I just kind of noticed that in the kind of background of a scene, and it just happened to be the thing that was most physically interesting. It was, better than anything that was going on with the actors or the director or anything like that. It's just like, oh my god, an extra lying on the floor painted like that, you know. And it's just that pulling those things out was what I tended to do, and what photographers in general do.
Hmm. And then another teen movie. Um, I,
Not another teen movie.
not another
That's a
teen movie.
crucial distinction.
Not
'cause
another teen movie.
it was a branding thing. They didn't want it. They didn't want it. They wanted anything but another
Yes.
teen movie. And no, that was okay. The story behind that was they had two young female actresses that were supposed to play a set of conjoined twins. So they had an apparatus between their two heads that connected them, and basically they couldn't pull out of. So they were in that thing for an entire day, and they had to do everything together, drink together, go to the bathroom together, and literally like this with their heads to the sides connected. Unused to this, So it was at one point late that night, maybe it was 2 a.m. because the shoot ran late. They had a scene with a lot of animals in a at a party, I guess, including a giant pig. A pig, one of those oversized, barnyard, very well behaved barnyard pigs. And one of the actresses began giggling uncontrollably. And it turned out she was kind of like having a reaction to the proximity of the pig, which was right
Like
next
a
to her.
nervous,
And she
like-
just started to like laugh uncontrollably, and she was in hysterics. And literally her partners, who's like this connected to her head, was going, it's okay, breathe, breathe, breathe. And the other one's going, ah, ah. And people on set really didn't know what to do, like call 911, give her a Quaalude. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's a dated reference also.
Xanax.
Xanax,
Updated.
thank you. Of course. But so she calmed down,
Right.
shoot went on, and so forth. But it was like one of those moments where actually probably the backstory is better than the picture. Actually.
No, the picture's great.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. And it definitely was not another teen movie. Just for
I finally watched it just because of your show. I was like looking at all the titles and I was like, oh, what's that one?
Was it good? I didn't see it.
Oh, you haven't? Oh, that was actually a question I had.
I tended not to see movies I was on because I lost my curiosity for them, or I was afraid.
Well, you watched them kind of being shot, so
Yes.
you kind of knew already everything. What of the things you shot, have you watched any of them?
I watched a bunch of them,
Okay.
but there's something about it. It pierces the fourth wall.
You watched the Austin Powers movie?
Oh yeah,
yeah,
several times.
There we go.
There's my photo right there. I was on that for a number of days. Many of the others I was there for half a day or one day or something like that. Very little time, and maybe they weren't my favorite kind of movie. There were some, slasher movies that I didn't particularly want to go through as a paying customer.
Right. But you did watch all the porn that you
exactly. I have that. Yeah, exactly.
So he was also on a lot of sets for, was it porn? Would you call it porn?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Can you tell me a little bit about how you ended up there?
Same way as everything else. I got sent mostly.
Okay.
The early 90s it was before the internet actually, and there was a point of almost a tipping point where our pornography became a legitimized curiosity, and a couple of magazines became interested in covering it. And they didn't become interested in publishing the pictures because their advertisers would inevitably say, no, we can't run pictures from a porn set, even when you don't show, payoff. So a couple of editors sent me to do Premiere Magazine, and another magazine whose name I don't remember right now sent me to do these. Oh, no, Buzz Magazine. It's a local LA magazine. Sent me to a set of sets, and I took a bunch of pictures, and I had met a number of the people who made those kinds of movies and videos at a porn convention that I had to cover for Entertainment Weekly. So I had some contacts and asked them if they, so I got access to these things, and it's actually fascinating because it's like the stunt, the sex version of stunt work.
Right.
That's what the actors are. There's stunt people who just happen to be doing it something else with their bodies that's not so dangerous.
Well, maybe it's dangerous.
Well, in the long run, they were. Yes, I'd say so. Probably it was bad to their psyche.
Yeah,
more dangerous to their psyche than just hitting the ground is as a stunt
How did your
person.
wife feel about that?
She was okay.
Yeah.
Movie professional. And she got to see the pictures, and she could see what I
There's
was
some
doing.
really incredible points of view that you got there, like in between things. And do you have one that sticks out to you at all?
There's one I'm not even sure it's going to be in the show.
Uh-huh.
There was a naturally when they're measuring the light, they put the light meter close to a body part. So there's a picture. I don't know if it'll be in the show, but it's a hand coming into the frame, and it's measuring light right next to a man's member. And so there you have the light meter, the penis, and the two actors completely ignoring it. And it's so that's and whether it matters or not, two of the three people in that photo are now dead. So it has.
Wow.
There are, speaking of consequences of whatever lifestyle was involved at that historical juncture. That's how it played out.
Mm.
But most of it was. That's what I mean about there being some aspects to this that you can't have in a picture that require narration. Um,
Yes, the book is going to be really interesting.
I think probably on that level it will be,
Mhm,
because
mhm,
it's what's outside the frame and what's outside the moment,
mhm.
is all these stories, the things that really happened, when I wasn't just staring at them.
I'm going to have you close your eyes,
Hmm.
and you know your work of art, and you know what is in this, um, you know, from that period that we're going to be showing.
Hmm.
Is there any picture that comes to mind right now?
Can I cheat and look? I-
That like stands out to you
of my own
of
stuff?
your own stuff?
Yeah, probably.
Mhm.
There's one picture.
You can
Can
open
I
your
open my
eyes.
eyes now?
Yeah.
Oh, no, I forgot completely. It only worked when my eyes were closed. No, okay. Yeah, probably it might be the picture I'm best known for. This one I'm known at all is this picture I took of a Richard Pryor billboard being raised over Sunset Boulevard, somewhere in the late 70s, or it was probably 1978. It was the day I know that the first space shuttle landing ever took place, because I had to cover it as part of a team of 4 photographers for Discover magazine. And I was coming back at like 9 in the morning, having had no sleep that night, basically. And I had just dropped off my rental equipment and was driving along Sunset Boulevard going west, just past the Chateau Marmont. I realized they were raising a billboard. There was some stuff on the sidewalk and a big crane. I thought, oh, I'll take a look and see what this is. There's no traffic. So I pulled over, and they were raising, it was a billboard for Richard Pryor live on the Sunset Strip, a comedy album in which he is, uh, his face is his mouth is wide open in a kind of a silent scream, like,
Mm.
oh, and they were raising that head part. Uh, and so I shot that happening and then drove home and fell asleep. And that's the picture. So it was sort of a, you know, sunset. One of the things about Los Angeles that people from outside Los Angeles may or may not understand is how we have these kind of, you know, giant signs along Sunset Boulevard. This is the city where, for 100 years there's been a giant pretense industry, or pretending is, it's an industrial industry that's based on fictions, giant fictions, but it doesn't necessarily show it that much more than other cities, except in certain areas like Sunset Boulevard, where there's a lot of billboards, or Hollywood Boulevard, where there's a Walk of Fame, or maybe Venice Beach. But otherwise, it's just sort of a bunch of suburbanism, like most other cities. So Sunset Boulevard is a different kind of, it's like a set of semaphores of what's ever happening at the moment in the culture, in
Mhm.
music and movies and television and whatever. And so, as a kind of a look at that kind of signifying, heroic signifying, in a flat city where,
Mhm.
put something up there, people notice, because nothing else is that high. I just as an Angelino, I like to have taken a picture of that.
Yeah. Do you still do that at all on
I do that.
Sunset?
I no, I don't. I don't drive that much anywhere.
Good. Good for
uh,
you.
and I'm not taking selfies. No, I'm not shooting that much. I'm mostly writing now, because I've
Yeah.
got so many pictures that not the last thing I would like to do, but I'm not. I used to, you know, I was very aggressive. I'd go out all the time looking for things to shoot in between assignments I had to shoot. I
Mhm.
was driving the streets. I got an awful lot of pictures just driving around and seeing something, stopping, and it was a kind of laborious process. But I saw some amazing stuff driving by them. There's stuff out there all the time if you really just look for it, and also don't get in an accident while doing so.
Don't rubberneck. Yeah. Um, would you have one little insight for, everybody is, well, most people come to Hollywood because they are kind of artists, or they want to play make believe almost. Or, I mean, even a photographer is an artist. Just a lot of people here are trying to figure out their dream, and there's a lot of dream oriented people here. And you were able to accomplish that and continue to. Like, any advice?
Uh, well, there's been now, I don't know how many generations, 5, 10, how many, 100 years worth of generations of people coming out here.
Hmm.
And remember, the United States is a country people come to chase, like survivability and their dreams and so forth. And then California is an incredibly, in Southern California, is an incredibly pleasant environment people come to just for the weather and for basic job opportunities. And they also come here, a whole another contingent comes here, sort of self-selected like 3 different ways, because there's this fantasy industry here, and there has been for about 100 years. So if you want to add yourself to that, you can do that from South Platte, North Dakota, or if that's even a place. But you can now chase your dreams from home in your garage somewhere,
That's
because the
true.
internet equalizes us all. But the opportunities are a lot denser here.
Hmm.
The big media companies may do some of their productions in Bulgaria, but or Georgia or whatever, Vancouver, but the headquarters are here. So you can get noticed here faster, and you can learn from other people who've been here before. And they have so it's basically one of those things of you know it separates people out based on their persistence,
Hmm.
mostly talent and persistence. If you have a reasonable balance of those two things, and you won't understand whether you're persistent or not until you persist. So there's one direction you can go in if it's basically forward.
Hmm.
Um, and you can do things in your spare time and get better at them, and then become, you don't have to, you can have a day job and do something in your spare time. Novelists, including like Stephen King, have been doing that for years. You can learn your craft, not as on a full-time basis, but a part-time basis, and improve at it and become professionalized enough to make a career out of it. So there's the same ways of moving forward as there always have been. And it's a giant filtration mechanism based on opportunity and self-selection.
Hmm.
So just self-select.
Select yourself.
Yes, select yourself first.
Thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure having you.
Thank you.
I'm
Likewise.
very excited about this show, and I want to take you upstairs to see some of your stuff framed.
Love to see it.
'Cause,
We make the
yeah,
dog go to sleep though.
I know she's so at ease. This doesn't mean you're boring, by the
She's
way.
not. Maybe she's heard it before.
She also says, "Thank you for shaving today, because you look really clean cut. I know you did that for the
I
show."
did it. I did it. It was a totally intentional act, and I thank her for not shaving.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
I really don't want to see what she really looks like underneath that.
Yes, one day. David Strick, thank you so much for joining us. And for everyone, come out next Saturday, 4 to 8 p.m. at Rita House. Thank you.
Thank you.